Well, the day is finally here. It's finally warm enough in the Northeast to get outside, film some videos, not in my office, and more importantly, throw some discs. The snow has melted enough. There's like some snow on the ground over here, but there's enough room for me to throw a couple discs. So you're gonna be out here with me for my first fieldwork session of 2025. And I'm also gonna go over some things that I would do if I were learning for the first time. Like if I had to relearn everything all the way back to the basics and I knew, okay, I wanna work on my form, I wanna throw far, there are some things I would do differently, and I wanna talk about that a little bit while I'm doing some field work and getting back into the swing of things. Anyway, let's just get to throwing, shall we? It's finally not that windy. I can get a little bit of a warm up in. Starting off with a zone, first throw out in the field of 2025. Oh, feels good. It's like 41 degrees out and I'm like actually kind of warm with just a sweatshirt on. Yeah. It's funny, I just went snowboarding yesterday, so spent the day in the snow and now it's finally nice out enough the next morning. But I am a little bit tired, a little sore. Okay, first throw with a distance driver. Oh, that's a good rip. Still got it. Easily at least 450. All right, so first thing I would do differently if I was trying to learn to throw far again from the very beginning is have a heavy focus on watching high-level pros form, and especially a wide range of them, not like super focused on one person. I was very focused initially when learning to throw on my own form and using tips from YouTube videos or people that I've heard, or maybe even a coach or two along the way. And it was helpful, but without having a baseline of form to look at all the time, I was only looking at my own form. And it's easy to kind of get lost in your own form journey without having a reference point to kind of go back to of an ideal form to keep yourself in check. And so I made a lot of progress, but I also went down a path of like creating bad habits and not really seeing the bigger picture because I was so focused on myself. And so you have to have a bit of an outside perspective where you're looking at other people's form and have a high emphasis on trying to have a sort of end goal of what you want your form to look like. You definitely want to have a good idea in your head of what good form looks like as you're going along the journey. You want to strike a good balance between that. You want to spend time working on your own form and get familiar with it, but you don't want to get so tied to your own form that you kind of forget what it is that you're trying to go towards. All right, this is an understable destroyer. Oh, well, all the discs I've thrown so far are pretty overstable. So that went further than I expected. I have one more really flippy one. I'll try and give it a bit more hyzer so it doesn't go way right. There we go. Oh, it's so far. And I'm not even fully warmed up. Yeah. I think that tree that I'm almost hitting there from where I'm going is pretty close to 500. It is like ever so slightly downhill as well, so it's something to keep in mind. It's not like an exact distance, but it's good to know that I still have the juice after having not thrown for a little while. All right, number 2 is do field work at least once a week. Consistency is so important. Checking in with yourself is so important. Just being on the course or throwing into a net is not gonna tell you all the things you need to know, and not getting out into a field and throwing a lot, you're doing yourself a disservice not doing that. When I was first learning how to throw, I did do a good amount of field work, but it definitely happened in bursts. And there were periods of time when I wasn't working on that, and I just would not get any better. Even if I was trying to do form changes, if you're not getting out into a field at least once a week, you're not gonna really see a lot of return on investment, because you need to have a good regimen of checking in on yourself, seeing how your throws are going. You know, you can learn how to throw into a net and get your nose angle and your arm speed and all that stuff good, and your form looks good on camera. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to throw, and you have to be able to analyze yourself. So getting out into a field, doing field work consistently, at least once a week, I would say for most people, is really, really important. It'll keep you in check, and it'll keep that progress kind of steadily moving forward. Let's throw an old Halo Destroyer. See how it holds. There's a little bit of headwind here too, so flippy stuff is going to turn over quite a bit. This is like a, oh, it's like a straight flying Halo Destroyer because it's pretty beat up. I'm noticing I'm like throwing super nose up. That must have been something I've created for myself by just throwing into a net so much. Probably just not really thinking about nose angle at all. And I don't have a tech disc either, so. There we go. That's more of a normal throw. All right, number 3. This one's really important. This is one that I still hold true to this day, and I was really bad at early on. The tip is to stay as curious as possible. Don't get complacent with just the big ideas that are thrown around. When I first started learning form, there was kind of just the big ideas that I wanted to get down, which, don't get me wrong, you want to get the big ideas down. You want to make sure your X step is good. You want to make sure you're in kind of a staggered stance when you're taking that last step. You don't want the step to be too long. You want to have a good plant leg. You want to have a good reach back, a good power pocket. All that stuff's great. But I want, when you think about your form, to not think about just these segmented big pictures, because in between all of that, there are these little details that also matter. Maybe not just as much as the big ones, but they matter a lot more than you think. And it's those little details that are going to be the hardest things to figure out towards the end of your form journey, which kind of I had to figure out in this off season. And so I would tell you to be curious, try to figure out what those small details are that you're doing wrong, intricacies with your grip, sort of the position of the disc, like just little things like that. Do you like holding the disc like this, or do you like it at more of an angle? Do you like your reach back to be straight back, out a little bit? Does your reach back go back at this angle, at this angle, at this angle? Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone kind of figures out what works for them. Are you pulling through up at your pec, or are you kind of coming down a little bit lower towards your rib cage? You know, when you rotate, are you kind of reaching out, or are you keeping the disc in and then going back? Like, there's just like little tiny things that you don't really think about, right? When you're thinking about just reaching back, just get the disc back behind you, there's little details that go along with that. The timing of that, how the mechanics of each part of your body are working together in concert and individually to make that all work correctly. And you'll notice that a lot of people have different preferences as well. It's gonna depend a lot on your body. And so just be really obsessed with those small details and make sure you're working on the big picture stuff, X step, plant leg, power pocket, reach back, with the little things, little grip things, little timing things. Make sure you're working on both of those at the same time, because if you do just the big stuff, you're gonna hit the main points, but then you're gonna have a bunch of these little bad habits that are causing problems with your form that you're gonna have to kind of take 2 steps back before you can take steps forward when you have to fix these again, which is kind of what I had to run into a lot of times. All right, let's just throw like a big hyzer. I've kind of been throwing flat. Let's just throw a hyzer. Oh, nothing like just ripping a big hyzer out there, huh? I almost hit that cone out there too. You know, I'm realizing I'm kind of throwing in this strip of snow. It might be kind of tough to get some of these discs. It's good I'm filming all of it though. Number 4, do not get too attached to specific pieces of advice from other people. When I was coming up, I was very naive. I assumed that other people who have been playing longer than me, even coaches, some coaches, I naively thought that they just knew more than me, and all of their advice must be good and must be helpful to me. And there are a lot of times when I got advice from people and it led me down the wrong path, or it didn't really put me in the direction I wanted to go into. And you might realize that there's a lot of people out there that, especially when you're a beginner, don't know as much as they're leading on or as you realize. And taking advice from too many people like this, especially online, if you go on the Facebook disc golf form check group, or if you go on Reddit, or like Instagram comments and stuff, heck, even in the comments of my videos or other YouTube videos, there's a lot of people who like to give their opinions, who like to chip in and say stuff that really don't know what they're doing. They don't really know what the advice that they're giving is. And there's a lot of people out there that are willing to give their advice. And you have to just kind of be careful with that and don't take everything that someone who's better than you says as gospel. This isn't like a super easy tip to kind of give solid advice on how to overcome but you just have to be careful along the way and just have a bit of skepticism. Maybe look at other people, look at different people and see, what does this person say about the reach back versus what does this person say. You're gonna have people with different opinions that are both valid. You're gonna have people with different opinions where one is a really good advice and the other really isn't. I got this old Ricky destroyer. I'm gonna try and throw a big anhyzer with it. Most of the ones I have left now are like overstable, but this is the only one I think I can get a big panning anhyzer out of. Oh, it kind of flexed out. I guess it's a little stable. Huh. All right, tip number 5 is to throw as many different discs and throwing styles and types of throws as possible. You don't want to lock yourself into one kind of disc, one style of throw, one type of throw, maybe backhand or forehand. There obviously are people that can learn how to throw a lot of just really overstable stuff, or just learn how to throw only flex shots, or learn how to throw only backhands. However, if you want to become a well-rounded player, you want to learn the most about yourself and open up the most doors to become as good as you possibly can, I would highly recommend trying as many different types of discs, types of throws, styles of throwing as you can, because that'll lead you to what's going to end up being the best version of yourself, most likely, as opposed to locking yourself into one version. I kind of tended to throw a bit more overstable. I tended to throw pretty much only backhand, and particularly more of like a flex shot, and I think that locked me off from a lot of different things. My forehand took a while to develop, and I didn't really have a very good hyzer flip understable game. And as I've gotten better at doing those because I've opened up my mind a little bit, and especially with this YouTube channel, I try out so many discs. I've had to force myself to learn how to throw some of these understable discs. If you look at my old disc reviews, like when I first started doing them, I didn't know how to throw understable discs very well because every disc in my bag was fairly overstable. If you're only throwing halo destroyers, you might only learn how to throw these flex shots, and if someone hands a bit of a flip of your disc for you that you might use in the woods or something, if you try to throw a leopard, you're gonna have a lot of problems with that. And so it might be useful to kind of learn how to have that game. Someone like Gannon Buhr relied heavily on his flex shot for quite a long time, but in order to get better, he's now learning how to throw hyzer flips more, because even though a flex shot is really useful, at the end of the day, having a deeper bag of tricks to pull from is always going to be more useful for you than just having one trick that can get you through a lot of situations. Additionally, if you only throw understable, trying to throw overstable, or if you only throw overstable, trying to throw understable, or throwing more hyzer flips as opposed to flex shots or whatever, doing these things might expose weaknesses in your form. A great example is someone who always throws overstable and always throws these flex shots isn't gonna really have as much exposure to bad form as someone who's more throwing like understable. And if you take that person that throws flex shots all the time, give them an understable disc and have them try to throw it, you're not going to have as much of that like reliable overstability of the disc doing the work for you, and it's going to expose some more issues with your form. And so branching out, trying different things is going to help you find those holes in your form and be able to fix them earlier on, as opposed to using a different disc, a certain disc or a certain type of throwing as a crutch. I'm going to try and throw like a flat flex. I'm throwing these all like kind of like high and nose up. I feel like I'm going to try and get it more nose down and like keep it flat and like turned over. I think this thing is still stable enough to give me a pretty decent flex line. Man, it's still too high. I mean, it's a good throw, it's just not what I was going for. This one's more stable, so I'm gonna try and throw it basically into the ground. I'm throwing a little downhill, I guess, so it might look like they're higher than they actually are. There we go. Overcompensated, but you know. Tip number 6, take care of your body. Going out and just hammering away at field work, just throwing as hard as you can constantly with no warm up, and not going and doing yoga, doing your after round, after tournament, after field work stretching, not getting into the gym. These are all gonna be things that are gonna come and bite you in the ass later on because you're not taking care of your body. I am certainly someone who just spent a ton of time going out into the field and throwing all the time, going to tournaments throwing. I didn't really have a great warm-up routine in terms of getting my body ready for throwing high power shots. And I definitely wasn't in the gym enough, especially during the season. I definitely wasn't stretching enough. And so taking care of your body throughout this is gonna just keep you, one, in better shape, so you're not losing that throughout the year as you sort of create injuries for yourself throughout the season, but also stop you from getting to a point where you have to stop playing or you have an injury that stops you from being able to go out and do field work or work on stuff, because that's going to be the killer for you, is if you're hammering way too hard at this stuff without the right procedures of keeping your body in check, you're going to get to a breaking point where you're going to have to take a break, and at the end of the day, that's probably going to ruin a lot of your progress because you're not going to be able to keep going. It's okay to have a bit slower progress if you create these procedures for yourself to keep yourself healthy, keep yourself in shape. Over the long term, it's going to create a lot more longevity as a player, and also just creating more time for yourself to work on your form. I got this old Macbeth destroyer. I haven't really thrown it all that much. Kind of curious how it flies. Oh, it kind of flipped up. I feel like I'm throwing everything way too high right now. I don't know what that is. I did play some Ultimate recently. That might have something to do with it. I don't know. First field work session of the year, so things to work on. The last tip, and also a very important one obviously, is to never get complacent. If you feel like your form's looking pretty good and you're kind of early on in your form journey, it's a pretty good indicator that you're getting complacent. You're feeling a little bit too good about yourself, because if you look at the top pros in the game, they'll even tell you they're working on their form day in and day out. In the off season, they're making changes. And so if you're not a top rated touring player, it's pretty unlikely that your form is at the pinnacle of what it could be. And there's always things you could work on, even at that top level. And so if you ever feel yourself thinking, oh, you know what? I think I'm at a good spot. I don't think I really got to work on anything anymore. I think I'm all good. 99.999% chance that is not the case. There are things you can work on. There are things you can fix. If you want to get better form, always be willing to look for these changes that you can make, things that you can get better at. Obviously, there's a balance you got to strike when you're playing tournaments. You don't want to be constantly making form changes, but when the time is right, be willing to make those changes and look for what it is that you can improve. I know I'm always doing that. I know the best players are also doing that as well, which is why they stay good for so long. They're always looking for what they can do to get better and improve their form. And even people getting into the later parts of their career, like Ricky, who is, been on tour for a very long time, won many, many tournaments. He's still working on, he's doing a bit more of a power grip now. He's changing little things. Gannon Buhr, who's had one of the best seasons ever in disc golf, is working on having more of a hyzer flip game. There's still things you can always work on. And so if you get this feeling that something in your form might be just a little off, chase that feeling and figure out what it is that you think is wrong. Don't just sit there and think, it's probably fine. Go after that. Figure out what it is that's wrong. Figure out how you can fix it. And if you keep doing that over and over and over, and don't be complacent, chase that feeling of trying to get better every day, you will see progress over time. And I'm sure you'll look back a year ago, and if you had that mindset for a whole year, you're going to be surprised at how much different your form looks now compared to then. I know when I look back a year ago, it didn't feel like over the last year I've done that much, but just constantly having this mindset of trying to fix things and work on stuff and just be willing to try stuff out, I feel like my form just looks so wildly different now than it did just a year ago. And so that mindset just keeps that train going, keeps you moving forward, and it keeps that progress going over time. All right, I'm gonna throw one more shot, give it a good rip, try not to get it too nose up this time, and then we'll sign off. That was a pretty good rip. My grip was kind of terrible though, and it stalled out in the head. Okay, one more, I lied, one more. This is the first disc I ever threw 500 feet with. Maybe we can do it right now. That was pretty good. I'll take it, that was a rip. All right, thanks for watching, hope those tips helped, and pretty happy to be out here doing some field work for the first time in 2025. Many more outdoor experiences to come. We're done with being inside. I'll see you next time. Peace.